Thank you for joining, Jacob.
Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here for sure.
So you've been doing such a great job with all these mystery school teachings on essential works, and if you've got to post it on your YouTube and Rumble channel, and we did that intentionally, like we try to get the word out about Jacob's teaching as much as possible. And I really appreciate how much life experience you have. It seems like your life is the story that has taught you maybe more than anything else. It seems like you're a really great teacher about your own life experiences. I'm not sure though if we've actually gone through much of your life in one video, one explanation of what has led you to this point, what has led you to become more confident in your spiritual wisdom that
Yeah.
seems to be guiding you. So I'd like to go back maybe more to your childhood and ask, did you feel like you were a spiritual person in childhood, or how did spirituality develop in your life?
Oh man, great question. So it was I guess the big sledgehammer blow from the universe. No, I feel like regular kid up until I definitely was more quiet, introverted. My parents would say. Um, but I was in a pretty bad car accident when I was a little kid, and I think that changed everything for me. I was 6.5 years old down in Miami with my family, and the day after Christmas or so, we're going to drive back to Athens, Georgia. And I think my dad may have fell asleep or we got into an accident. And basically, this Jeep Cherokee that we were all in, and everybody had like a little bit different scenario that happened to him. My mom was stood against the telephone pole and broke her leg. My dad was thrown out the door and cut his face on the windshield and his arm. And my brother got no scratches on the going out the back hatch of the Jeep, and we were just the back seat folded down, so we were just sleeping back there. So, um, and then I went face first to the back window of the Jeep Cherokee, the one that doesn't roll down, and flew through the air, and then the Jeep literally flipped on top of me. And I was found underneath. My dad said I really wasn't breathing or had no heartbeat, and apparently that happened again in the ambulance and in the hospital. I had to be resuscitated again. So, basically my whole life I was told I was a miracle. However, it's really tough to hear when you're a little kid. But I was in the emergency room for quite some time. And then I eventually went back and was laid on my grandmother's couch for probably a couple months before I went back to school. And I couldn't get up. I couldn't walk. I literally had to, the doctors told my parents that if he was to live, probably be like a vegetable the rest of my life. I wouldn't be able to walk or talk or really communicate. But
And how old were you then?
I was 6.5. Yeah. So I was quite young, but definitely something that was, a stage in your life that's memorable. So yeah, I'm on the couch and peeing in a cup. The teachers come over to bring my work over to me. My grandmother does it for me pretty much. And I went back to school a couple months later and had to learn how to walk and talk again. I went back to school in a wheelchair and had to learn how to walk and go to physical therapy and get strong again and talk again. Um, it was one of those experiences. I left me with a lot of scars on my face, in my head. I had glass come out of my face for, I don't know, probably a year or two after that, and it was very painful and it would work its way out. But I guess what was really strange about it, I didn't question that like God existed. I just was really angry at God at that point because people made fun of me, my scars on my face. I was in a wheelchair. And it was tough. It's a tough childhood after that. And but it made me who I am today, to have compassion and empathy for people, to be in those kind of predicaments and have to be like that. So I definitely have learned my lessons from it. I'm thankful for it. I wouldn't be the person I am without it. But I'd also see the dynamics of like what happened to me, as opposed to happened to my brother, and the things that he experiences because of it. Things my dad, like my dad might experience guilt because he feels guilty for driving the car. My brother is somewhat jealous as he's 4.5. And so I get to go out. I don't have to go to school. I'm at grandma's house all day. He's jealous of that fact because he doesn't really understand. my mom probably feels a lot of guilt and everything too. So it's weird how a big event and so many people can take different things away from that, and they can be lifelong struggles to get over. And sometimes maybe some people don't ever get over it, but it's been that one thing that's a constant to why did this happen to me? What happened and why did it happen? And they always say people who have like really extreme head injuries really wake up after that. And I felt like because I was questioning, I was angry at God and everything for that happening to me. I was always like a little bit more present, I felt like, than other people, and like asking more questions of why are we here and what's going on and what's this whole thing about. And yeah, that experience really changed my life and just made me a lot more present, I think, overall. I endured a lot more suffering. And I often heard like the Buddha say, what wakes people up is typically suffering. And I just feel like over many, many past lives, it was just these things that happen. And it just, as you reincarnate, those things just kind of condense and happen earlier in life and they're more prevalent. And like I said, again, it's just a crazy thing that happened, but I'm totally thankful for it. I work with special needs kids and adults today, and I don't think that I would be able to have that event not happen to me and just know what it's like to be the kid in the wheelchair, know what it's like to be different. And then that gives me the tools to be the person to help them and sit with them and not necessarily give advice, but sometimes just hold space for people and sit with people. So, um, but after that, yeah, I just always had questions. I always had questions. I always questioned everything. I remember being in um, church not long after that, and I grew up Pentecostal and people like running up and down the aisleways and speaking in tongues. And I was just like, man, I understand what you guys are saying that you are supposed to be speaking other languages, but I just don't believe it. But I'm like 7, 8, 9, and you just don't tell adults that, or you don't really ask those questions. So, but it was very weird to me that was going on. Now, I have my own opinions on it, but yeah, I always had a lot of questions, how things were working and who God was. And, I had a lot of questions that, sometimes people I would ask and just nobody ever answered them for me. So I feel like that really pushed me over to eventually just studying for myself, just feeling empty inside. And like the information was fulfilling to me.
So you didn't really feel a connection to God in the churches as a child? Did it take a certain point?
Um, I remember being in the church and being like Sunday school, and we were reading especially the Old Testament, Moses and Elijah and all these cool prophets and everything. I remember reading those stories and like I felt like my imagination was so heightened at that time that I felt like I was there when they were reading those stories and we were talking about them. I was at that place in my mind while we're doing it. And I do believe that now it seems like those things are past lives that I was like almost remembering. You could see it clearly and it made a lot of sense to me. And so that stuff I loved. I loved talking about it. I love asking questions about it. And who are these giants and who are these people that were, who are the Israelites and who are these people and why are these people mad at each other and why is their God telling them to do this? And there's a lot of questions a lot of people didn't answer for me then either. It was just like, oh, just listen to the story. They just kind of brush you off. But that stuff I did love. But as you get older and stuff and you're in and you get kicked out of, the children's part and you have to go sit in the pews with your family and everything, that stuff just it didn't resonate with me because it was really fearful and it was really scary. And now I look back and I was like, I was looking for the truth and I was looking for to say things that really excited me. And, to me, if I was to say, what's the most important thing in the Bible, a lot of people would spout off probably different verses and things like that. But to me, it was like what was written in red, the words that were in red, the things that Jesus spoke, those parables and those teachings. And those were really exciting to me. And I really like talking about those. But yeah, it was, kind of being scared if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And sometimes people would scream and get excited, the preachers and stuff. And it was just, yeah, I just felt like people saying that they were saved and, they were one way in church. And then I would go hang out at someone's house and hear how they talked about other people and stuff. And I was like, man, why would you talk about someone like that? Didn't you say at church the other day you loved everybody and now you're talking like this? So there was a lot of contradiction there for me. It was a really, when it came to faith and religion and spirituality, that was tough for me because I wanted to ask the questions, and I did sometimes, and I just never got the answers adequately that I felt like I needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the same way for me growing up. The churches seem to be just adding more questions. As much as they claim to have answers, they couldn't really satisfy me with the answers. Um,
Right.
but I do feel like there was different points at which I felt I had some kind of a spiritual experience in church or thinking about Jesus, where it seems like there's an awareness that something is going on in me that is not a part of my normal experience. That this is a kind of love that I'm feeling that is not a normal experience. Do you have anything like that that kind of awakened you to like the value of spiritual seeking in the context of Christianity or anything else?
Yeah. So, okay. So, fast forward, I go to college and I want to get away from home as much as possible, like anybody else, right? And so I got a autoimmune disease pretty early, around 19 or 19, yeah, probably. And it was just really awful. I mean, it's a dis-ease, right? Your body's not at ease for whatever reason. But I basically got something called urticaria, people call it, which is like a rash that gets really itchy, can be really hot and feverish, and really painful. And I would go to the doctors and they would basically say, we don't know where it came from, how to get rid of it. We can give you antihistamine stuff to make it tolerable. And that stuff, I would go to class and I would be so tired from taking it, just to try to alleviate the pain. But I was exhausted and I couldn't even, keep my head up in the class because I was so tired. Um, and that disease brought me to all kinds of more questions. Okay, if they can't tell me how I got it and how to get rid of it, and I'm just going to take these drugs my whole life, like that doesn't make any sense. So in college, I'm just like studying different things. I'm studying Reiki energy healings and I'm studying, different modalities that possibly could work for me. And one of the things I definitely did do was go do some Reiki. And it was cool because I went to Reiki and I was like the first person to go. And I'm just like, gonna sit there and let them, put their hands on me or hover on me or whatever. But everybody does their thing and it's, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes or whatever. And it was great. It was beautiful. I was calm and everything was, wonderful. And I went and sat down. And as soon as I sat down, I kind of felt like, oh, I just want to sit here for the rest of the time and kind of bask in this energy and kind of watch and learn. I had done my research and I felt like I understood what was going on and what they were doing. And it wasn't energy necessarily coming from them, but should be energy that you're channeling through yourself out to your body, out your hands, and delivering it to other people. So, but I mean, I was definitely no practitioner. I had no kind of, experience. But after I got done, I sat in that chair and I was feeling kind of, okay, grateful and sitting in my chair. I'm going to listen. The voice inside of my head said loud and clear, now it's your turn. That's all it said. And I was like, what? I said, now it's your turn. And after it said it the second time, I knew that it meant I was supposed to go up there and give Reiki to the other people that were there. And I was just like, I'm not licensed or certified or anything like that.
Maybe I could stop you right there and ask, do you feel like you'd ever heard this voice prior to this point?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Throughout my life, I felt like I'd had that voice hit me a few times in specific circumstances, instances, that were very important typically, but it was, not something that happened for me every day or every month. It was just, sometimes you heard it and you felt it.
So it seriously catches your attention.
Oh yeah, seriously catch your attention. You know what I mean? It's just like at that point I'd already, knew that, something to listen to was that, like that's like your inner voice or, sometimes it felt like it was coming from other people, but it just, it's in the back of your head and it's just loud and clear. And it's like, just like we're talking today, it's just like, sometimes you doubt, is that me? Is that somebody else? What is it? But at that point, I feel like it already knew at least that I'd heard it enough that I knew that it was something to listen to. And I was like, I couldn't overlook it. I had too many kind of synchronicities about it.
And you didn't have a name for it. Would you have called it the Holy Spirit at that point?
No, I don't think so. It was just, I don't know, the voice, your intuition, whatever. But I don't think at that point I necessarily had a name for it or anything. No. Um,
All right, you
so
can
yeah, I
continue.
got up there, huh?
Yeah, go ahead, continue.
I got up there and started doing my thing and, running my hands. I didn't really touch any people, but I think they call it Reiki because you're just raking energy. And I was raking it out of people and letting it go and, flowing it through people and felt good. I really enjoyed it. I had fun doing it. It kind of added a whole nother part to the thing because I was like, I didn't come there to give, I felt like I was a sick person. And I was like, what does a sick person with autoimmune disease have to offer? But yeah, like I said, it just was this undeniable. You have to, when you hear something like that, you have to do it. So I did it and it felt great. Through that Thursday night Reiki healing session at this metaphysical place in Atlanta that I went to, all kinds of people came. The most interesting guy was a guy named Paul who had 3 or 4 different types of cancer, stage 4 cancer, pretty bad. He was coming in to get Reiki energy healing. I also realized that he was going to the hospital to get chemotherapy as well, but he was doing it all. And this guy was really like the happiest dude I'd ever met. And I couldn't, I was frustrated with autoimmune disease, and this dude he was on death's door. I mean, there were a couple times when he came in after radiation therapy and stuff that he looked awful. And I was like, how is this guy so happy? How is he, so ecstatic to be here? And I was like, I just don't get it. It blew my mind. So, but one of those things that comes along with working with someone who is sick or special needs, to me, there's a little bit more empathy there. You have a little bit more in you that wants to help a little bit more, in those cases. So, I did. Every time he came in, I was like, oh man, we're going to give Paul a good one today. I just wanted to help him out so much. And so we did. And in one of those instances, I was on one side and a couple people on the other side, and there's 5 or 6 people working. But as I'm running my hands over, just doing my thing, um, there was no doubt a strong presence in the room, and it was almost like you could feel it. And I turned, and it literally felt like Jesus Christ walked into the room, and he walked up close to the circle, and he was, 4 or 5 feet away from me. And it was like undeniable. Like, that's Jesus Christ. He's in here. And I didn't see anything with my eyes. It wasn't like I saw anything. There was no shadow, was no light. It wasn't anything like that I can remember. It was just like 100% feeling of the most powerful presence I've ever felt in my entire life, that there had to have been some kind of entity standing there, because it wasn't just me. I was like, wow, dude, that's insane. And as he's standing there, that undeniable feeling of presence and calm and serenity and peace and power and prestige and love, all the things, I was just like, God, it just felt really heavy. And then it's almost like he turned and looked right at me, and I was like, oh God. And I just felt really, at that moment, like, whoa, what's going to happen here? And he just walked into me. He walked across from where he was 4 or 5 feet away, and he walked right into my body, and I lost it. I just started bawling, crying. And I felt all that stuff, all the prestige, all the power, all the peace, all the love, all the harmony. And I felt it in me, and it was insane. It felt like I was downloaded with four or 5,000 years of information. It just felt like the whole experience felt like it lasted forever. But I was crying, and I even forgot that other people were there for a while. Like, it was just me and him for a second, and I'm crying, and I'm just downloading this information. I'm feeling these feelings, and there's just this amazing feeling of, this is how you should feel all day long. You shouldn't feel like this at church. Just at church, you shouldn't feel like it just in these spiritual retreats or some. You should feel this power and presence with you all day, every day, where you go, bring it with you. That's the message that I got. It was just loud and clear. Like, the Christ consciousness isn't something that happens on Sundays at 12 o'clock or, because you're helping a friend. It should be something you walk around with all day. And so it was overwhelming. And I would imagine it was 45 seconds, but it felt like 45,000 years probably. Um, After about 45 seconds, I'm bawling out crying, and somebody just comes up and puts their hands on me and kind of pushed me off into a chair and sat me down. And while I was crying, the girl across from me, who was probably just a couple years younger than me, but we're about the same age, and we were there for the same reasons pretty much. She ran out the door. And I honestly thought that I scared her to death. I thought that she was terrified that I freaked her out because I'm crying in the middle of this thing and, whatever. And so, anyways, I sit down. I'm, gather myself, stop crying. I mean, pretty much almost as someone touched me, the feeling kind of left, you know what I mean? And so I'm sitting down and kind of gathering my thoughts about everything. And everybody's staring at me like, what happened there? What's going on? And I was like, you guys, you wouldn't believe me if I told you, and I just figured I would say that and leave it at that and nobody would say anything. But they're like, oh, no. That's not how this works here. You're going to tell us what happened. And I was like, man, you guys, I mean, honestly, I can't describe it any other way that it felt like Jesus walked up. And then as he stood there, he was watching us and he directly looked at me and he walked into my body and I just lost it. And I just, I told him all the feelings and everything. And as I said that, the girl who came in, Natalie, she was like, oh my God. She goes, I felt that too. I felt his presence. And it was so overwhelming for her that she had to leave the room. She couldn't be in there. She said it was too overwhelming and she left. And that was like the thing that was like confirmation that somebody else felt this feeling, somebody else knew about it. I didn't need it. I didn't need any confirmation, but it was 100% synchronistic confirmation that somebody else did it and they couldn't even handle it. It was so powerful. And then Paul was like, that was the best healing he'd ever got. And pretty amazing. So I was really thankful. And that changed my life forever, forever. That I knew at that moment that, everything about Christ had ever learned and coming into our hearts and saving us, it wasn't something that people talk about and say, and oh, God is in my heart. It's something that really happens. And the vast majority of people that I ever knew, I don't think ever had an experience like that. I'd never heard anybody say anything like that. You know what I mean? But that's what it felt like to me. It felt like it was the real, genuine. I was feeling empathy and love for this individual that I barely knew, just trying to heal him of his cancers. And it changed my life. Yeah, I knew at that moment that Christ was a real, not that I didn't know then. Like I said, I always believed that God exists, but I knew at that moment that Christ was, I could have a real relationship with it, that it wasn't something I would just talk about and say, Christ is in my heart. I'm saved. Look how I'm different now. But like there was a real entity out there that you could connect with, that could talk to you. And yeah, I've had many interactions with that feeling now. But long story short, I wanted to go back because this is such a great story too. Paul came many times and got more sick. Eventually had to go to hospice, and me and Natalie went to go see him in hospice and do healings on him and everything else. And he ended up dying. And so we went to his funeral in a Catholic church. And I always felt so bad, man. I was like, man, why was that feeling there? Why did we have this feeling? Why did that thing happen with Paul, but we didn't save him? How come we couldn't save him, And so we go to his church and we go to his funeral, and we're all in the fellowship hall, and there's these spiritual people, that I recognize and I know from many of the metaphysical places that I knew Paul went to. He went to several places just like me, looking for healings and looking for spirituality. And they were all the Catholic people there too. But we were all sitting at the table together. And I remember having a conversation with people about Paul and just talking about spirituality, and that, just because you're dead doesn't mean you don't come back, and reincarnation. And obviously that really took a toll on some of the people there, and they, kind of didn't like it, I could tell, and kind of arguing a little bit about it. And I was like, just my opinion and stuff. But at that moment, I felt Paul standing behind me, smiling from ear to ear. And it was like, again, I didn't see anything, but I knew that it was him. I knew he was standing behind me. I knew he was smiling. I knew he was like, hallelujah. he wanted to bring the Catholic people that he had grown up with to this spiritual place. And his death literally brought us into a place that I'd have never gone to a Catholic church like that. And most of the people who went would have never gone in. And I knew while he was smiling, while he was cheering, he kind of like let me know at that moment. He goes, this was the goal for me. The goal for me was to bring all these other people to this thing because his disease brought him there. That was a gift that he didn't realize until he probably died, or maybe even before then. I don't know, but he realized that the cancer was something that was a gift for him to go find what he needed in life, and that his death brought all these other people to these spiritual people and to have these conversations, and we're all sitting amongst each other and intertwining. So, yeah, it was. I realized at that point the goal wasn't for us to heal Paul. Paul was healing us.
Yeah. Great story. Yeah, it's profound how much division there is amongst spiritual communities, and when that was exactly the opposite of what Jesus wanted to teach, and it was like he was trying to emphasize that the Gentiles have to be grafted into the tree. It's not just about the Jews who he was trying to preach to. It's everybody else is a part of this
Mm-hmm.
same spiritual path that we're on. Yeah, and so now in the Bible says we had the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Clearly what you're describing: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, just automatic. And then the works of the flesh are contrasted against that, which are things like division and dissensions and rivalries and all these things that are plaguing the different spiritual communities once they're opposed to one another. So it's a great story that it really shouldn't be so divided. And honestly, there needs to be kind of a community of believers that can be just open to everyone. It just make that the rule. It's just believing whatever you want to believe because we're accepting of your free will to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, there was an aspect to it where you're like, yeah, sitting at a table with people who don't agree with you, and that's the point, though. You're not. I've never met anybody that I agree with on everything about on everything. So, you know, we shouldn't be so hard on people trying to like, you have to believe this, you have to believe that. Like, no two people believe exactly the same things on everything, but we should all be open to learn from each other and grow from each other. And that day, even though, I feel like I'm talking to them, I'm still trying to listen because I know at that point, I already knew that I leave no stone unturned. You know what I mean? Like I was already on the mission to learn everything I could. And it was for me, man. You gave me a lot of praise earlier being a teacher or whatever, but I feel like I was just a adept student. I was just an apprentice. I was just learning things and trying to figure things out for myself because of all that confusion that happened in the past. And I wasn't really, no one was really ever feeding my soul with information. That saying, Christ says, don't work for the food that spoils, work for the food your heavenly Father provides. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for truth. I was looking for stuff that made sense to me, that nourished my soul. And those kind of events, being sick, having autoimmune disease, that gave me the right recipe to go find some of these teachers, because when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And Paul was a incredible teacher. And it doesn't work out the way you always want it to, but life and death are the same thing. Being born is like dying, and I believe he'll be born again, and I believe he'll have another experience, and I think he will be even more attuned, and more growth will happen because of that event for him. And it's not necessarily a sad thing that he died of cancer. I think that his mission overall was complete, and it's time to move on and go to the next one. And so it was beautiful. I look back and I'm like, man, thank you. What a beautiful experience. It didn't happen the way I wanted to, but it happened the way it needed to.
So do you feel like this is an experience you would call being born again that you had with Paul? And do you feel like that is something that you can come back to? Is it meditation that helps you go back to that state? Or is there something about your natural life that can draw you back into that?
So being born again, first of all, I think I do believe we reincarnate and we die and we're born over again and we try out new situations, cultures, skin pigmentations, all the things, roles, masters, servants, all of them, to learn it all. So we learn to die over and over and over again, and let that ego helps that, kill that ego for us. We die thousands, millions of times, whatever it is. Um, and we learn to die in this life. I mean, I was a kid at one point. I thought I'd always be a kid, a teenager. I thought I'd be a teenager forever in high school. And then you're in college and you think that's what it is. And then you're out of that. So like those, those people are almost dead. You know what I mean? Like they're not here anymore. Like college Jacob is gone. Middle school Jacob's gone. They're not, I mean, you learn to die from that ego of like, that's who I was. I'm not that person anymore. I'm more than that. And I'm growing and I'm learning. But I do believe that there are, mystical experiences. Oftentimes, experiences that I've had with that kind of Holy Spirit energy, that Christ energy, have usually been by myself. There's a handful of times where it has happened with other people around, which is pretty cool. One of the instances was I was in Tybee Island with my family one time, and I felt like for some reason, I was like pretty much the only person that I could see on the beach. And my parents just said, meet us up here at this restaurant or something whenever you get done. And I was like, okay. So, the sun is setting and I'm on the beach and I'm looking at the ocean. I just said, hey, God, ocean, spirit, nature, whatever. I've got a lot of things going on lately and it's feeling good and I'm appreciative of it. I'm very, very grateful for all the things that have happened, learned so far. If there's anything else that you feel like I need to know at this moment, let me know. I'm receptive. I'm open, and I'm just hungry. I'm hungry for some more. I'm that blessed is he that's poor in spirit. I'm poor. I need more. And I just left it at that and let it go. And I didn't expect anything or didn't think anything would happen. I just said it out loud. And I turned around and met my mom and dad at lunch. And while I was sitting there, it literally felt like Jesus was standing behind me. He walked up to me, put his fingers on my shoulder, leaned in and whispered in my ear. And in a split second, the I knew the prodigal son parable. I knew what it was all about. Like I knew the whole what it was. It's just like a completely download of that the prodigal son wasn't just a cute little story about some guy who goes out, but it was me and it was you and it was everybody. And everybody has to kind of leave the safety of the light and the Father to go out into your darkness and not judge yourself or be hard on yourself because all things that happen. But when you finally come back and you realize that the Father still smiles and loves you and kills the fatted calf and does things for you that the other ones who haven't left yet don't get and are confused by, because like we haven't left. Well, you got to earn that. You got to go earn that because you got to go out into the dark. But that happened right in front of my parents, and I was like, oh my gosh. And they were like, what? And I was like, you guys wouldn't believe me if I told you so. And again, I just thought that was going to be it. And they were like, no, what happened? And I was like, Jesus just stood behind me and told me the prodigal son parable. And I told them exactly what it was. And they didn't say anything. They couldn't say anything. And to me, that's what I was looking for, right? I don't want to be the person that says, I asked Jesus in my heart, so I'm saved and I'm good. And that's all it was. And, I got baptized in a pool when I was a kid and everything else. And those things just didn't, it was a cool experience and it was fun, but I just didn't get enough out of it. I didn't feel changed. Those experiences like that, I felt changed. I was different. I had a relationship with Christ. He knew me and I knew him. And I honestly believe, looking back at it now and really been able to, when you look at things from the past and you're able to kind of like connect the dots and everything, I believe that I was a follower of his 2000 years ago. And I lived a life back then. It said that, he told these parables to people out in the open, and but he told the meaning of those parables to his true disciples. And I believed that I was one of his true disciples, that behind closed doors, we spoke and he told me the understandings, and what they are is kind of quantum physics. There's a lot of parables, and I believe that they're really quantum physics to how the universe works, like the laws of the universe. And almost all of them are usually about you and me and all of us and how we fit in the scheme of the universe. And I believe that it was just a download, like the things that you learned in all your past lives. When we get to this point now and this crux, this on our way to 0 point, I just feel like I've had dozens and dozens of past lives bleed through, so that I love Judaism. I love Christianity. I'm really into Native Americans. And so all these things just kind of come, and like all of a sudden one day I'll just like know something, or I'll just have a huge question in my head, and it'll be like, go look up this and go watch this. And I'll just have like this weird, I will personally be able to look at it in a different way that I think most people can do it, because I have researched it, and this has been my, you know, even how sometimes some people come out and they just painters, some people are just music, some people are this. I just feel like when it comes to information, I can look at it in a way, non-biased, not attached, either for or against it. I can just see it in a way that I can play. I can play the song. I can play the music. I can look at something and be like, oh, that's how that works. And I just 100% believe that over many past lives, I've just been a seeker of truth, and that's my gift. Just like somebody else who plays the piano, or someone else who helps people, or servants or whatever, and that's mine. I just feel like that's what I've done
Well,
over many.
let's dive into some of that a little bit with the parable of the prodigal son. So the prodigal son basically wanders off and goes to the darkest point and doesn't really believe that the father's going to forgive him to the degree the father will forgive him, or believe in forgiveness at all. And
Yeah.
do you suppose that the turning point is actually self-forgiveness, that you begin to value yourself enough to recognize you can return to that love?
Yeah, and I think add a little bit to it too. I mean, the guy didn't just walk out the door and leave. He took his entire inheritance. He took everything that his father should have gave him, and took it all and spent it all and wasted it all on, the all the things of life that we probably shouldn't, right? They told her not to get into prostitution, whatever, and just wasted money gambling. And then he ends up, at a farm or whatever, eating the slop of pigs, and that's like, you shouldn't eat pig back in the day, and it's a disgusting animal, and blah, 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 for a few people. And, he's not going back to be his father's son. He's saying that even before he goes back, even my father's servants eat better than this. They live better than this. I'm willing to go back to be my father's servant in order to just live better than the life I'm living now. That to me is a key part of it. Like, because, what did Christ say about being the greatest among us is a servant? He just wants to go back to his father to be a servant, not to be the prestige level that he was to be a son. And so that's where I feel like that really kicked in for me when that event happened for me. But I think that he goes back with the humility of, I'm not the person that I was. I'm not at that prestige anymore. But the father then says, oh man, no, you're not going to be a servant. I'm going to kill the fatted calf for you. I'm going to make you know and feel that you're number one right here, right now, in this moment, and above everybody else who didn't leave. Like I said, the other siblings were angry and upset and jealous because they were killing fatted calf. I'm like, you didn't do that for me, and I stayed here the whole time. And to me, that's part of it. Like, we have to leave that safety and security of the light to go out and have these adventures, to go become the hero of our own journeys, to learn, to grow, to evolve, and realize the whole time, we're holding that judgment against ourselves. We're angry at ourselves that we did certain things, but God and the universe, unconditional love, is loving you. It just loves you. It just says, hey, it loves you so much. Go out there and make mistakes, and I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm not going to be jealous or angry. I mean, those qualities that we hear in the Old Testament, I feel like are not God. They're gods from people from other planets and stuff like that. But in my personal opinion, but in John, it says, no man has ever seen the face of God, that God is love. And when God dwelleth within us, we're with God. And when God is in us and we're experiencing it. So that to me is what it really is. And so it's giving you free will to go out there and make those, decisions for yourself, to learn and to grow. And that it's not like judgment necessarily, but there are consequences. If you do this, these things will happen. If you start shooting people, people will probably start shooting back. If you start loving people, people will love you back. And that's what happens. You steal from people, you'll be stolen from. And that's what has to realize. Whatever you put out is what you get back. And there's no judgment. There's no anger towards it. But yeah, when you finally go back, you realize that God loved you the whole time, and what a just open arms, comes back. And that's what I feel like for me overall. When you talk about the Holy Spirit, I've had those moments where you're in a room by yourself. Typically, is when mine have been by myself, where I'm on the road of learning and growing and reading the Bible and reading other books and trying to find more truth and have these incredible experiences where you can get completely filled up with unconditional love. And you just have these incredible messages that are just, it's almost like someone's talking to you, but there's no words being said, but it's obvious that, I loved you the whole time. Just take it easy, relax. It's okay. Everything's fine. Keep going. Don't be too hard on yourself, and it's just like, thanks, I needed that. And I usually end up bawling out, crying and feeling grateful and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like there's personal responsibility, but there's also, I think, the spiritual responsibility with letting go of all our worries and giving over the concern that we manage our lives and plan everything in specific orders, to try to be the best person we can be. I think a lot of times our plans are constantly failing, and that's just another lesson in cracking us open to our intuition,
Mm-hmm.
or trusting. I suppose that there's some connection between trust and the intuition that is the release of the rationality or the logic of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like I look at your background and I see that water flowing, and I feel like what we want to do is very egoic, but like what our soul wants us to do, when our soul is concerned with, is like this easy flowing river. And we just have to let go and flow with it instead of fighting the currents and trying to do the things we want to do. Like, I think our life really could be a whole lot easier and really work out for us and blossom in many ways if we were just to stop fighting the current and let the overall natural way of all the things in our life just develop naturally. Like your soul knows what it wants, and our brains and our egos kind of mess that up a lot. And it really should be easier. Life should be a lot easier. Spirituality should be a lot easier than we all make it. It seems that way. And as you kind of let go and surrender to the universe, it becomes a lot easier instead of fighting it.
I've wondered. It definitely seems true, but it also seems like we're constantly being given the hardest challenges that represent the deepest attachments that we haven't let go of yet. Like, being a parent, it seems like there are, ways that my kid is mirroring me. You have a kid that's a girl that's 6 months older than mine, so
Mhm.
it's really interesting watching them both develop. That they seem to, for me, it's like the lessons don't seem to stop. They seem to keep accelerating. But I know that it must be related to, um, aspects of my own consciousness that I'm still processing when I get frustrated or feel confused about how to handle a situation. It seems like there's just the next level, the next doorway of opening up to trust and opening up to faith and, love in those moments.
Right. Yeah. Like kids are like the instant karma, right? So everything that you haven't worked out and things that, you get jealous about or angry about or possessive over, you get it real quick too. And they're learning from you real quick, whether you know it or not, one little thing you say or one little thing that you do. But yeah, I mean, it seems like now, and it's obvious, right? Because if we are in the 0 point, if we are in a place where many of us have wanted to be for a long time, right, to build up to, then we're in a great purification. So if we want to make it to a 5D world or 1,000 years of peace or a new Kali Yuga or a golden age, we're going to have to purify all those old karmic patterns that no longer work. Jealousy, anger, resentment, and those things are not going to have no place for a world that's higher dimensional. You know what I mean? They have their place in your life. You know what I mean? Because they're needed, and they'll help you see contrast in your life and help you learn lessons. But to go and to be a higher dimensional frequency, reality, there's no place for those, for jealousy and anger um and resentment and those kind of things. You want to live in a higher vibrational um, frequency. And I would imagine there are planets out there, highly civilized planets, where it's like everybody knows all your thoughts and everything. You can't really get away from that. So you have to be careful. And we have to realize, like, eventually, like, I mean, a lot of people probably already picking up on it. Like, I'm already picking up on people's thoughts and feelings immediately, especially if they're intense. The more intense they are, the easier they are to pick up. So, there's going to be a time when there's nowhere to hide anything. Your thoughts, your emotions and feelings, like, eventually we're all going to be completely like naked here. Just, there's no hiding anything anymore.
And do you think that's occurring more with children, like the children that you're helping?
Yeah, I do. And I think because of working with like special needs kids and adults, and oftentimes many of them are just who they are, exactly. And they don't care anything about what anybody else thinks of them. I think that's given me a great opportunity to really dive into myself and be the same thing to like, imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? So I'm trying to imitate them and try to be like them as much as possible. Like they don't care. They don't care what everybody else thinks about them at all. And I want to be like that. I want that kind of level of freedom, right? I want to be that free to, I can be myself totally, completely immersed, like weird stuff, weird mysteries, talk about whatever. I don't care what anybody says or thinks. I don't care if anybody thinks I'm totally wrong or crazy or whatever. It's totally fine at this point. Like, um, yeah, there's some people who are ready for the mission, and there's some people who will hear some of the things I say, and eventually will probably be like, "Oh man, that dude probably was speaking the truth. That probably is a true thing that's going on," and come back and have a conversation with me. And to me, that's even better. I love that. I love to say something, probably something someone's never heard, and then them tell me I'm completely wrong, and then come back 6 months or later and be like, "Dude, actually, I've been having a lot of conversations with people. What you said about this, and." I think you're right. And sometimes there'll be people who just like tell something to them years and years ago, like my parents, and I'll tell them some things that are going down and they get mad about it. And then 6 or 7 years later, they're like saying the exact same things. And I'm like, but they don't even give you credit. You don't even get credit. You're kind of, and at first that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit that I would say things and they would totally be mad about it. And then 6 or 7 years later, be like, oh yeah, this is that. And I'm like, yeah, I said that. I told you that. And then you thought I was totally crazy. And eventually you just realize it doesn't matter. How everybody learns it is fine. You don't need the ego to be completely feel like I deserve credit for that. Like
Yeah.
they figured it out for themselves when they were ready. I may hopefully planted some seeds and you can't unhear what I said, but at the end of the day, I'm just glad people are learning stuff. I'm glad people are waking up, right?
And even with telepathy, it's possible we can just plant thoughts by just putting them out there. And people don't even need to hear it from us. We can think about them learning the lesson and them learning the truth. And maybe the universe will bring it to them without us having to even do it.
That happens to me a lot. That happened to me yesterday, just sitting in a cacao ceremony at a retreat yesterday. And people are talking. And as they're talking, I'm like thinking things and I would think something in my head and then kind of direct it. And then people would say it. Or
Yeah.
I've been in conversation with somebody who's been upset or angry or something. And then like took the second to calm down and relax, thought something and directed it at them. And then they like change their way or change what they were saying or say something that I know is 100%. I mean, the 100th monkey effect pretty much, I feel like at least pretty much solidifies that fact that, if you teach somebody something, if somebody knows something, after about so many monkeys learn it, then monkeys everywhere start to figure it out, learn it. Same thing with humans, multiples effect and those kind of things and technologies that happen at the same time. So there's no doubt that time and space doesn't matter. Wherever you are on the planet doesn't matter. If you can think about something, you can project it out, people will pick it up.
I'd like to go back to another thing that we were talking about with not caring about what other people think. For me, it seems like there's really two ways to become detached from what other people think and feel about you and what you're saying. And one of them would be because you don't care about them, and one of them would be because you do care about them, and you want to help them without getting distracted by what it is that they're thinking and feeling. So
Mm,
if we want to truly help people without being too attached to what they're thinking and feeling, we would still acknowledge what they're thinking and feeling. And it seems to be like you're saying, we want to speak the truth. We want to speak the truth that is balancing the distortions which we're perceiving, without infringing on their free will or without making them too upset or anything that um, they feel wronged by us or something like that. I don't know if
mm,
there's a line that you have to be aware of, but it seems like once that line is respected, that we're not hurting this person through saying something. It is appropriate to find the balance, find the truth that is the deepest truth. And I think that's the greatest compassion, to find the deepest truth that is being essentially requested by that person's higher self. That's the way I see it too. Is it's not just that we're speaking to the person who is asleep, but we're speaking to the higher being, which we see fully awakened that is calling us to be of service to the sleeper aspect of themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, and you said something earlier about it's for the people like your friends and your family and probably your romantic partner, maybe the hardest one to not care what they think. But I mean, really, instead of saying it like I don't care what other people think, really more move into the I'm going to be myself no matter what. And even being myself and being totally honest and being kind and trying to be kind and be truthful to people. I've said things being kind and truthful that hurt people's feelings still. And you just and I felt bad. I was like, man, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I was trying to help them, and they took it the wrong way, or they heard something they didn't want to hear, or thought that took it from their point of view from a hurt place or a victimized place. And I was like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to help you out. Um, and I realized that. So I feel like at some point you got to be like, just being yourself sometimes is going to really piss people off. I mean, obviously Christ was himself and he was crucified on the cross in front of people. So, um, and oftentimes, many people have died in many similar ways and awful ways for being truth and being themselves. But, you got to, it kind of comes with the territory, like being honest, being truthful, being yourself rattles people up. Like, cause most people aren't being that. So when you see somebody who is doing it, a lot of people don't like it. They don't like that. It's like that person's being a little too honest, being a little too truthful, being a little too themselves. And, it makes me feel like I'm not subconsciously. So, you want to attack those people or, say what they're saying was wrong or they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know truth, whatever. And I've experienced that many times. And I just realized, it's all right. People are going to come against you no matter what. If you could be the sweetest, juiciest peach in the whole world. And there's just some folks that just don't like peaches. So,
Yeah, we're a culture that kind of encourages people to conform and stay with the system that people think is the right way to do things, but to be a light shining on the hill, to be not hidden, not hiding the light of our existence. We kind of have to be radiant in what the heart of our experience really is, and let people sort of taste the joy that we have wherever that joy is in our experience. Otherwise, I think they will continue to be without joy.
mhm. Yeah, and you can't find it for anybody. You can't find joy for anyone. I feel like the best teachers that we can be is just to be it ourselves. I mean, at this point in my life, that's really more than anything. That's what I want to be. Is just try to be the beacon for everyone else. Like not try to teach anyone anything or tell anybody how it is, but just be it. I mean, that's what got me, to watch someone like a Wayne Dyer or a Greg Braden or someone and just like, find something that they're talking about and like really listen to them and watch them and give their experiences and stuff and be like, man, wow, like that really resonates with my life. And it's just like they're not trying to be anything other than just themselves. And like that catches my attention. This is my experience. This is what happened for me. And I'm like, wow, that did it. That did it for me, So I want to do the same thing for other people. Just like let's not push things on people or, try to convince anybody. If someone doesn't believe there's an inner earth, that's fine. There's other things that we can connect on and talk about. And some people don't believe in aliens. That's fine too. Like I don't have to convince anybody of it. It's not like necessary. I feel like at some points in my life, it definitely was. I'm like, come on, man, you got to know that stuff. You got to know this. And it's like, there was a frustration that I felt and that wasn't worth it. There's nothing worth you being frustrated trying to teach somebody else. People can wake up tons of different ways. Some may be just working with special needs people, some may be serving others, some may be reading certain books, like some may be suffering very difficultly and something comes along and a relationship ends or whatever, but eventually everyone's going to have those things. So let them have their life, let them have their journey, and don't have to convince people. But that's something I'd have to learn and just let it go, just do your best and be yourself. And it tends to work out that way. This past retreat, there was a really feminine led ceremony and there's only like 3 guys in it. And I was like the next to last person to go. And I just, as each person went before me, in the beginning, I was like, I knew what I was going to say. I knew what I was going to talk about. And then each person went and it was just so beautiful and so incredible. I just like I shed a layer. And the next person went, I shed another layer. And I was like, 6 or 7 people before me, I was already crying. And each person that came before after that, I was crying even more till they finally picked me. When I got up there, something different came out, and it's just there's so many layers, and this life is so beautiful, and you just like we are talking about before, just flowing with it instead of against it, or trying to come up with their ego, like what's going to sound cool, what's going to make me sound cool and enlightened to everybody. And it's like, nah, like be real, um, go deep inside of yourself. And that was an incredible ceremony. And afterwards, I was just, I cried in front of all these women and men and everything. And like, I didn't feel bad about it or anything. It just is what it is. But like afterwards, so many people were in the cacao ceremony afterwards, and people were talking about it, just like, man, I really felt what you had to say, and what, that you were a man crying in front of people. Like, wow, like we don't see men doing that, like we need more of that and all that stuff. And I was like, I got a lot of praise for that. And I was like, wow, that made me feel really good, because I wasn't trying to, I was going up there in the beginning to be, this enlightened dude to say these things or whatever. And then after that, I broke down and I became, something different. And that had more impact on people than what I thought probably would have. And then I had my Tao Te Ching book, and I was reading it afterwards before the cacao ceremony. And a friend of mine asked me, she said, "What's your favorite thing in there?" And I was going, and there's so many great things, the duality, um, and the fact that it's old and it's almost like a mystery in itself, just to read it, read one page. Sometimes you got to read it a dozen times and you still might not know what it means. And I was like, man, there's so many things I could have said. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I've read it yet. I don't know. I just found this real deep sense of saying, no, let it go. You don't know yet. I was like, okay, I don't know. And I still had maybe, third of the book left to read. And so everybody left the yurt that we were in, and I was sitting in there, and I just pulled the book out and I laid on the bed and I was reading it. As soon as I pulled up the next page, it basically said, the greatest people among us live very humbly. They don't try to be the great people, the great men, the great women. They just be who themselves and be who they are. And in that in itself makes you great. And so I went back and told her, I was like, this is it. This is the greatest thing I've seen so far. And it made me realize, like Jesus walking around barefooted and everything else, that, he was so great. He was just a servant helping other people out. And he wasn't trying to be a king or wear a gold crown or whatever. He's just being himself and helping people out. And I was like, man, that's it. Let's just be totally ourselves and use the gifts we've been given.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there is a kind of a constant um, dichotomy, or we get overly attached to the details of life. The looking what we frame as success is often material, and we forget that there's the true success is the little very subtle lessons that are learned through each experience along the way, whether or not you're helping your kids, or even pets or animals or trees or your garden, whether you're helping the smallest of consciousness grow and growing through that, or whether you're an emperor, you're conquering territory, you're the lessons are still the same spiritual lessons, and
Yeah.
the opportunities to forgive and love, like those are the true gifts, the true blessings that we're here for.
Right. Yeah. And I've often felt like just because somebody's in that experience now, someone's a king and someone's a servant, doesn't mean that in the next life they probably were going to switch roles completely. Like those movies that we see, Trading Places and things, where they can literally train. I mean, that to me is like a subconscious feeling that someone made a movie about, but that's like a subconscious thing of something real that happens. Like maybe this life you're the master, you're a slave owner, and the next one you're a slave, or you know what I mean? You're someone who's taking advantage of people, and next time you're the person who helping people. Like you get all these different aspects of life, and chances and tries and experiences to learn, and at the end of the day you realize I'm not just this one person. I'm not just this. I'm not just some guy in this flesh and this color and everything else. Like I'm way more than that. This is just the vehicle which I get to get around in for this life. But ultimately I'm the master and the servant, the rich and the poor, all of the things. I'm the introvert and an extrovert. Like all those things have time and places. And so yeah, I mean, it was just that experience at the retreat the other day was just amazing. Like, just there's no reason sometimes even try to come up with anything to say, like a lot of times it's just what comes out is what needs to be heard. And what you're feeling in your heart at that moment, that's what needs to come out.
So we're coming up close to an hour. I know you have to get going soon. Um, I guess it'd be good to wrap up with a discussion around what are the takeaways? What are the things we can give people right now? What are the best tools that you know of to help people find a greater state of inner peace or greater state of balance and harmony in their lives?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, for me, I'm just giving my gifts out. Like, so making them doing the mystery school, talking about certain topics. I mean, not every topic is obviously for every single person, but I feel like we're just going to keep putting them out there, and we want people to come join. It's not for me to be a teacher and just teach everybody this is what it is. I mean, like, I've got a subject I really want to talk about. I want to share it with you guys. And what does it invoke in you? What do you know about it that I don't know? Let's all get together and have a conversation about it, because that's how we grow. And that's how we learn, not realizing that one person has all the answers, but collectively we all have the answers to this big idea. And so to me, it is just, if we want to make the world a better place, then we have to be better, right? If you want more love, then be more loving. If you want more peace, be more peaceful. And then it has to be so. It has to be so. Like, there's no doubt, if I'm more peaceful, the world's more peaceful. If I'm more angry, the world's more angry. So what we want to see in the world, we do it. And so just with the mystery school, it's just coming up with topics that I feel like are important to make people aware of, not to scare anybody of anything, but just like, hey, this might be going on. How can we change it? How can we do better? How can we collectively get together, talk about it, work out some of these issues and problems that we may have so that we can overcome it, right? Like, no matter what it is, anger, jealousy, wrath, whatever, like, let's get to it. Let's talk about it. Let's have a real adult conversation about things and unravel the tension around certain issues. There should be no subject that anybody should be afraid of talking about. When anybody shuts something down like that, to me, that's a dangerous thing. Everything's on the table. Every book can be readable. Every stone, leave no stone unturned when it comes to truth, because we are in a dire situation on this planet, and in every continent, it seems, everybody is feeling it, that we have to come together now. The answers, if we want to feed each other, then it's getting with your neighbors, and you growing this and I'll grow that, and we'll exchange the extras, and we'll do this with those people over here too. And that may be what it comes down to for survival, because obviously our governments aren't going to do that for us, so we need to be able to have conversations with people. We need to be able to talk to people and communicate, and let people know that it's okay. Like, it's because it's a hard situation or a hard topic doesn't mean we can't talk about it. Or you don't believe it at first, that's fine. I've had many people tell me that they don't believe this about the moon, or that the world could be an inner civilization or whatever. That's fine. But typically, if they're able to have the conversation and hear me out, I'm going to give you some good facts and some good things that I believe could lead to that being possible. And I'm 100% open to hearing what you have to say about it. But it's when those people who just shut you down and say they don't want to talk to you, like, and I feel like creates like a little tension and a little animosity. And it's like, why? Why not at least just have a conversation? Listen to what I have to say, instead of, you heard one thing you didn't like and you shut me down. Like, I'm not saying anything to be mean or rude to people or create division. I'm definitely saying things because I feel like they need to just be heard. And like, I want to be heard as much as anybody. So I feel like now more than ever, we need to have conversations, be open with each other, let people talk, let people be heard. I feel like more than anything now, people want to be heard and listened to, you know what I mean? No matter what it is. Sometimes, and it's not about giving your opinion on what you should do because of this event going on, but sometimes just venting and letting people vent and being heard. So holding space for them. But I mean, I'm excited about the mystery school. I love talking about it. I love new people joining us, new topics. I mean, to me, I'm a Gemini sun sign, so I love communication. I love information, and I want to talk about it. And that's what really gets me excited about, those kind of things, like I have physical activities as well, stuff too, but just challenging me in my mind. There's just, we have to believe at some point and know that everything we learned in school is not all that there is. just because you have a higher education or you've got a master's degree in a certain subject doesn't mean you know all things that there is. Doesn't mean you could have, there can't be other things that are going on, or, aliens don't exist, or, C5s can't be real. Like, no, man, let that stuff go, realize like there's a whole lot of this world out there and this universe that we don't understand and we don't know. And that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like not everything is figured out. I feel like when I was a kid, when they talked about the Loch Ness monster was just some boat, some that the doctor put up there, Sasquatch wasn't real or whatever. And I'm like, man, why'd you guys even talk about this if it's not real? Why'd you give any time to it at all if it's just something that's totally not real? And then you go back and you look at it on your own, you're like, man, there's no way that just one little boat, you know, um, totally takes away from all the other sightings and everything else, or that somebody said Sasquatch is real, so it's not real. And it's like there's a whole lot of evidence to suggest otherwise. And it's like those kind of things. I would say Sasquatch was probably the first thing that I really got into, that I kind of felt like I always knew was real, but I didn't start looking at it till later, in life, until my probably early 20s. And it was one of those first things I looked at, and I was like, man, there's got to be more to that story. And as soon as I did and looked it up, I just like an overwhelming plethora of information just comes in, and you're like, man, there's a lot to this. And that
Yeah.
broke open everything. Everything could be real to me. Anything is possible after
Yeah.
that.
It is amazing, and it's also a great one because it's kind of humorous to people to start with too, the way it's been portrayed. But I want to say that I'm I'm very glad that when asked you about people finding more peace in their lives, you immediately went to talk about finding peace with your neighbors, and it really seems like, yeah, that's totally makes sense that finding peace with our family members, finding the path to peace with our family and our neighbors, is the first step to finding world peace, to find it all across the world. And when it comes to differences of belief systems and differences in what could be true and what's even a discussable topic, what's even allowed on the table, it seems like, the process, the path to peace is always a gradual one. We're always going
Mhm.
to start with at one point saying, okay, I know you're of the opposite political party, I'm going to be your friend anyway, I'm going to be your friend. And then we won't talk about that yet, but we'll talk about this now. And we won't talk about that yet, but we'll talk about this now. And you keep on, as you open up your hearts to one another and forgive each other for your differences of opinions, then you realize it's just natural that people can become one with enough love and enough care, attention placed on it. So I really think it is a matter of just working at it like it's your job to find peace with others.
Isn't that wild that people now, it seems like, look for one topic that you don't agree on, so you can't be friends with him? If that is a Democrat or Republican, or he likes Trump or whatever it is, then we can't be friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's like one thing out of an infinite amount of things. Like, I guarantee you, every single person is more alike you than they could ever be different. But why look for one thing and be? I have to go into people's homes to work all the time, and I can promise you that there are a lot of things that we don't agree on. But as long as I'm there and I continue to go, I always find more things that are alike than differences. And so I stay away from some things, obviously some to talk about, but I've gotten to many conversations with people where I'm on one side or whatever, and they're on some side, and I'm like, we have a beautiful conversation of learning and engaging and trusting, and say, like, this is what I think, and you think it's fine, and they go well, and we really like each other more because we have different points of view, and you could talk to each other respectfully. Like, that's beautiful. Like, why look for one thing in your life that just doesn't, that I'm really adamant about? Play devil's advocate a little bit, like, realize that they're both wings, like Democrat, Republican, both wings of the same bird, light and dark, whatever it is, they're all part, that's just duality of the whole oneness.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm totally into, trying to find the things that make us similar. How can we engage? And at this point in my life, that's what I really want to do. I want to connect with people because we've been so disconnected. We live in our little houses with our one or two or three people. And, when these natives and everything lived in tribes together and worked together and grew food together and hunted together. And we're like so separated, we just think we're all so vastly different from each other when we're not. We're not. We all have the same belief, I believe. So we have the same feelings and the same wants and the same needs, and we want to be loved and we want to be listened to and we want to be heard. And And there's so many things that, we're all way more alike than we could ever be different. And so yeah, I mean that's it. We live in a separated world. Everything's compartmentalized, and it's like, let's start stripping the labels off. Take the labels off of being this gender or this skin color or this political party or that religion, and realize that the deep down core, like at least, at the very least, we're all human beings and we're
Yeah.
just here together.
Yeah, I think this may be a beautiful place to close it out now. And very much appreciate your time and sharing all your positive energy with everyone. And if you have any closing thoughts on, people living a life of magic, of connection to a higher power, the Holy Spirit, anything you'd like to leave us with?
It's all up to you whenever you want to make that decision, whenever you're ready. If it's a sledgehammer blow from the universe, or you just an itch that you have, or a little subtle feeling, follow it, go with it. But everyone is coming to those points now where there's a lot more to life. There's a lot more to mystery. There's a lot more to spirituality than we've been told. There's a lot more to you than you've been told, and how much power each and every single one of us have. Go back and find it. Go back and realize you're the hero of your own journey, and um, be excited. Be excited like a little kid is excited about new information and being here now. And love where you're at in your journey, and forgive yourself all the stuff, because you know what? It was your journey and your part. And it's only because someone made us think that we did something stupid or bad that we're tainted or wrong. It's like, no, man, you had to learn. And the things that I did that were bad or not good oftentimes put me on the path to being a better person overall. So give yourself a little grace, love yourself, forgive yourself. If you can love yourself and you can forgive yourself, everybody else is easy, for me at least. And I tend to see that for a lot of people. If you can forgive yourself, forgiving other people seems to be easy. So do it, do the work, and, be excited about it. Like, there's more to life than working and money and finances and stuff. Like, there's an exciting whole other realms of reality that are all around us that, no one ever told us about. So let's start getting into those and diving into the mysteries and diving into, you know, what's been hidden from us for so long.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Jacob, thank you again.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you always, and Ascension Works TV, man, for having me so many times. Love you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.